everybody, I'm Guthuk of Guthuk Gaming. Today I'm collaborating with Paradox Interactive to show you the new features of Age of Wonder 4's new expansion, Giant Kings. In the Giant King DLC, there will be more wildlife. Amongst them is the Letharine. The first Letharine you'll find is merely tier 1 and not very powerful. Fortunately, there are many more variants of them, which you'll start to find when you meet the Crystal Dwelling. You can decide whether or not to enable the Crystal Dwelling in your realm settings, but if you do decide to play with it, it will spawn in the middle of the underground. Once you meet them, you have 3 options. You can decide to do quests for them, trade with them, or declare war. If you look through the trade menu, you'll see a lot of very powerful effects and options that you will very much want for your empire. As such, you will have to do quests in order to build up your allegiance with them. The quest options are, of course, to ask for a quest, a more powerful quest, or to lose knowledge in order to build allegiance with them. And if you get your relations up all the way with the Crystalline Dwelling, you'll be able to build each of these Letharine units. You have a tier 1 support unit, a tier 2 ranged unit, a tier 3 polearm unit, a tier 4 battle mage, and a tier 5 giga mythic unit. You can see them all here in their shining glory. Each of them have their own abilities, but they all share some effects. That is crystal reflection. Non-melee attacks are reflected back at the attacker for 20% of the damage. Letharine units, as a group, really hate it when enemies clump together. They're very much an anti-enemy clumping. Volatile Charge is a new debuff that all basic attacks of Letharine units will put onto an enemy. When an enemy is volatile charged, at the end of 2 turns, it and all adjacent enemy units will suffer 8 physical damage and 8 lightning damage. The tier 4 Letharine Gemcaster has a special ability that is usable even if engaged in melee. It deals damage to units in a 5 hex long, 3 hex wide line, allowing you to apply this at a 90% chance to many enemies. Waiting 2 turns or volatile charge to end to deal its damage would be a bit boring. That's why the Letharine Gemcaster has a free use ability that can end volatile charge on target unit, triggering its effects. It is cooldown 0 though, so you can't spam it. If triggering volatile charge on even 1 unit is still a bit boring, you can use a Letharine Simulacrum. Target enemy unit sustains damage, and if they have volatile charge, it ends it, triggering its effect. Then this effect then cascades to all adjacent enemies and is repeated. Players have long wanted to do armies of all elemental units, and now you can with the Letharine and the Crystal Dwelling. Of course, there are those people who would rather turn their own race into elementals, and Giant Kings has that too. The Tome of Geomancy is available for both Materium and Astral players, benefiting people who like to play with terrain or like lots of elementals. Its defining feature, of course, is the Geomantic Crystallization, a powerful major race transformation that gives your entire race the elemental unit type, resistance to specific damage based on the terrain you're on, and more damage to your attacks based on the terrain you're on. The Tome of Geomancy has a powerful tier 4 racial battle mage, the Geomancer. The Geomancer has 2 attacks, Terrabolt and Geosurge. One of them is single target and one of them is a long range AoE. These will deal physical damage and cause enemies to bleed, but that effect will be changed by their passive ability, Geomantic Connection, which will change the damage and bleed effect to whichever terrain they are standing on. The Hologeomantic Resonance is a powerful late game building unlocked by the Tome of Geomancy. It will give your city different resources based on the terrain you've managed to put under it. The Resonant Blades enchantment from the Tome of Geomancy also allows all melee units to apply a powerful negative status effect based on the terrain. Finishing up this tome's terrain-based gameplay is Summon Elemental, which summons a tier 3 elemental in the target hex but bases the type of elemental you get based on the terrain of the tile you summon it on. Up next is a tome great for people who love to dig greedily and dig deep, the Tome of the Dungeon Depths. Most tomes offer you the ability to get 1 special province improvement from unlocking the tome. The Tome of the Dungeon Depths, on the other hand, allows you to research 2, 3, 4 special province improvements, which we'll get into in a second. As you might imagine, Tome of the Dungeon Depths is a tome about going underground. Other than its special province improvements, its other 2 aspects are Raiders of the Deep, a unit enchantment which gives every unit while underground 1 defense and 1 resistance, as well as Cave Walk. It gives all your units above ground 10% damage. Now you'll see that this affects every type of units. Tome of the Dungeon Depths does not actually require you to go into any one playstyle, but buffs pretty much every everything. The last thing Tome of the Dungeon Dubs does before we go into its actual province improvements is Dungeon Hazard. Dungeon Hazard is an enemy army spell. You cast this on enemy armies, it deals 15 physical damage, double to 30 if they are in a dungeon province, and then they become slowed for 1 world map turn, giving you a very large advantage in any combat. So that brings us to the actual strength of the Tome of the Dungeon Dubs. Now what is the actual strength? It starts with the Dungeoneering Conclave. The Dungeoneering Conclave is a unique building. It counts as a research post, which is quite powerful, and it gives you an additional 5 knowledge flat. Every single turn, a province in the city's domain becomes a dungeon. This province improvement gets +2 production per adjacent dungeon. The first researchable special province improvement we'll look at then is the Silent Barracks, which gives +1 fortification health per adjacent dungeon. Fortification health is quite difficult to get these days, so that is very powerful on its own. It also then gives you 3 city stability per adjacent dungeon province. Lastly, this city will be extra defendable as any combat within your terrain will be joined by 1 clay soldier. The other 2 follow a very similar pattern, with the Underground Vault counting as a mine, giving you gold and binding essence per dungeon province that is adjacent, and the Clay Forge counting as a quarry, giving you production and draft per dungeon province that is adjacent. The Clay Forge also allows you to draft the Clay Arbalist, Clay Charger, and Clay Defender units in the city. The Clay Charger, Clay Defender, and Clay Arbalist are 3 generic clay construct units. They are non-racial or anything like that. Their defining feature, though, is of course that they all have Legion. For each other friendly unit with Legion in combat, this unit gains 1 defense, 1 resistance, and 1 physical damage on attacks, and it stacks up to 4 different times. In addition, each of these clay units has Undying. Now, if you do enjoy playing Underground, there is a new Underground Wonder coming out with Giant Kings. A very powerful research post, the Pyro Vault gives you bonus knowledge for every hero in your prison, as well as increasing the chance of capturing heroes to 100%. If you choose to battle the guards within, you will have to fight the new clay soldiers, as well as a new primordial unit. There are 3 new primordial units that the wildlife can spawn, which are extremely powerful tier 5 units. Don't be like me and actually look up what each of the new primordial units do, or they might end up making a monkey out of you. All this and more is coming in the upcoming Giant Kings expansion, and join us next video as we'll be talking about the Giant Kings of the Giant Kings expansion.